Is China winning the COVID-19 propaganda war, the coronavirus soft power campaign? Not really. There will always be developing countries that look to Beijing for help with economic development and infrastructure. There will be countries like Russia that are pleased when China criticizes the US and particularly democratic norms. There will be many countries that will be too small or too anxious to speak up openly when they're concerned about Chinese behavior. But in the wake of coronavirus, a surprising number of middle powers and major powers in the international system are increasing their criticism of Chinese behavior. First and foremost, of course, is the United States. In the Congress on a bipartisan basis and in the Trump administration, there are calls for investigations of the coronavirus, decoupling of supply chains, and so forth. At times, the Trump administration's criticism is too pointed and looks too much like propaganda, certainly for some of our closest allies and partners who share the concerns but would prefer the U.S. speak softly and focus on leading in a solution to this pandemic, particularly in international institutions. But you see an increase of concern elsewhere. In Britain, which welcomed Huawei and Chinese companies into the 5G market over the concerns and opposition of the US and other Five Eyes intelligence partners, there is now a new debate. You hear in Parliament and in the media a call for re-examining whether China can be trusted enough on issues like 5G. You hear similar reassessments in France and in Germany. The EU as a whole is divided, but the trend line is not in China's favor. In Asia, Japan has introduced a stimulus bill with a $2 billion budget for repatriating supply chains, for moving out of China because of the trust deficit that China has created. You don't see that, but you can find it with Korea, Taiwan, and others. Australia proposed at the highest levels an independent inquiry into the causes of coronavirus. China threatened a complete economic embargo. The Australian public, media, and government forged ahead and actually won more support for this independent investigation, to the point where Xi Jinping himself has acknowledged there should someday be such an investigation, though he was very clear it needs to be later and when China says so. So on the whole, China is not really winning many powerful friends because of its propaganda campaign. It's hard to argue that the friends China is winning were not already inclined to look to Beijing for economic help or as a counter to US or other influences. But this does not mean the US is winning either. The US performance has not been highly rated, not in editorial policies, not in public opinion polls, and not in the quiet whisperings of diplomats in Washington. We win by leading. We don't win by criticizing China or engaging in a narrow propaganda war with China. So if we're worried about China's propaganda campaign in the wake of COVID-19, the answer is not more attacks on China, although that may be necessary. The real answer is leading in the World Health Organization, with our alliances, and in the global solution to this pandemic.